I was lying in a hospital bed, groggy from anesthesia, when my daughter Jennifer handed me the papers. She told me they were just routine medical consent forms, nothing important. My hand was shaking from the medication as I signed my name. I trusted her. She was my daughter, my only child, a successful doctor. Why would I question anything she asked me to do? 3 days later, I discovered those papers weren't medical forms at all. They were admission documents for Sunrise Gardens assisted living facility. And I was expected to move in by the end of the week. But to understand how my own daughter could do this to me, how I ended up trapped in a nursing home I didn't need while she took over my life, I need to go back to where it all started. My name is Patricia, and I'm 71 years old. I raised Jennifer by myself after my husband died when she was only 8. I worked 2 jobs, one as a secretary during the day, one cleaning offices at night, to make sure she had everything she needed. I saved every penny I could for her education. I went without new clothes, without vacations, without anything for myself, so she could have piano lessons and summer camps, and eventually, medical school. I was so proud when she became a doctor. Dr. Jennifer Morrison, my daughter. I would tell everyone, the checkout clerk at the grocery store, the mailman, my neighbors, my daughter, the doctor. It felt like all those years of sacrifice had been worth it. Jennifer married a man named Brad when she was 32. He worked in finance, made good money, and they bought a beautiful house in an expensive suburb 2 hours away from me. They had 2 children, Emma and Sophie, and from the outside, their life looked perfect. Magazine perfect. But I started to notice things. Little comments Jennifer would make about money being tight. Mentions of Brad's bonuses not being what they expected. Once, she asked to borrow $5,000 for what she called a temporary cash flow problem. I gave it to her, of course. She was my daughter. She paid me back 6 months later, so I didn't think much of it. Then my mother died and left me her house. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom colonial in a desirable neighborhood, fully paid off. The house was worth about $400,000. I had been living in a small apartment for years, and suddenly I owned this wonderful property with a garden and a front porch, and enough space for my grandchildren to visit. I was overjoyed. For the first time in my life, I had real financial security. Jennifer seemed happy for me too at first. She helped me move in, decorated the guest rooms for the girls, planted flowers with me in the garden. We had lovely visits that first summer. Everything felt perfect. Then the suggestions started. Jennifer began mentioning how big the house was for just one person. She would comment on how much work it must be to maintain. She asked if I had thought about what would happen if I got sick or had a fall. Who would take care of me in this big house all alone? I told her I was fine. I was 70 years old, healthy, active. I volunteered at the library twice a week. I went to water aerobics every Tuesday and Thursday. I had friends, hobbies, a life. I didn't need taking care of. But she persisted. She started calling more often, asking detailed questions about my health. Had I been feeling dizzy? Was I forgetting things? Had I noticed any problems with my balance? I would reassure her that I was fine, but she seemed determined to find something wrong with me. Then came the incident that changed everything. I had a minor fainting spell at the grocery store. It was nothing serious. I had skipped breakfast that morning, and my blood sugar had dropped. The store manager called an ambulance out of an abundance of caution, and I was taken to the emergency room. By the time Jennifer arrived, I had already been checked out, given some juice and crackers, and told I was free to go home. But Jennifer insisted they run more tests. She spoke to the doctors using all her medical terminology, suggesting possible conditions I might have. She made me sound like I was on death's door when I felt perfectly fine. The doctors, out of deference to her professional expertise, agreed to keep me overnight for observation. That night in the hospital, Jennifer sat beside my bed and talked about how scared she had been when she got the call. She said she had been worried about me living alone for months. She mentioned that she and Brad had been discussing options. She suggested, very gently, that maybe it was time to think about assisted living. I was stunned. Assisted living. I had fainted once from low blood sugar. I wasn't dying. I wasn't incapacitated. I certainly didn't need to be locked away in some facility. I told her absolutely not. I loved my house. I was independent and capable. This conversation was premature by at least a decade. She backed off, but I could see she wasn't happy about it. The next day, they released me from the hospital. Jennifer drove me home and stayed for a few hours, fussing over me, making sure I had groceries, setting up a pill organizer for my vitamins, even though I had never needed one before. Before she left, she hugged me tightly and said she just wanted me to be safe. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Jennifer saying she had made an appointment for me with a geriatric specialist. She thought it would be good for me to have a complete health assessment given my recent fainting spell. She had already arranged everything, and she would drive me to the appointment. I didn't want to go, but she was so insistent, so worried. I agreed just to put her mind at ease. The geriatric specialist was a colleague of Jennifer's. I sat through 2 hours of cognitive tests, memory assessments, and questionnaires about my daily activities. Some of the questions felt insulting. Could I balance my checkbook? Could I remember to take medications? Could I dress myself independently? Of course I could. I wasn't senile. At the end of the appointment, the doctor said everything looked fine for my age. Some minor memory issues that were completely normal for someone in their 70s, but nothing concerning. I felt vindicated. See? I was fine. But Jennifer had a private conversation with the doctor that I wasn't invited to join. Later, she told me the doctor had some concerns about my living alone, that there were subtle signs of cognitive decline that might progress. She said the doctor recommended I consider moving somewhere with more support. I called the doctor's office the next day to ask about this myself. The receptionist told me the doctor couldn't discuss my case with me over the phone, but that I should follow up with my primary care physician. When I did, my own doctor said he had no concerns about my cognitive function whatsoever. He seemed confused about where this narrative was coming from. That's when I started to realize something was very wrong. Jennifer began visiting more frequently. She would show up unannounced, let herself in with the key I had given her, and inspect the house. She pointed out a spiderweb in the corner of the guest room and suggested I wasn't keeping up with cleaning. She found an expired carton of milk in my refrigerator and lectured me about food safety. She noticed I had missed taking my calcium supplement one morning and acted like it was evidence of serious memory problems. She started documenting everything. I would catch her taking photos of things around my house. The mail piled on the counter, the dishes in the sink, the bathroom that needed cleaning. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was just concerned and wanted to keep track of things. Then she suggested I give her power of attorney, just in case something happened to me. She said it would make things easier, that it was what responsible adults did as they aged. She had the papers already drawn up. All I had to do was sign. Every instinct I had told me not to sign those papers. But she was my daughter. She was a doctor. She kept saying it was for my own protection. So against my better judgment, I signed. That was my biggest mistake. Within a month, Jennifer was making decisions about my life without consulting me. She cancelled my magazine subscriptions, saying I wasn't reading them anyway. She closed my long-distance phone plan because she claimed I was being scammed by telemarketers. She took over paying my bills, saying it was easier for her to manage everything from her computer. I was losing control of my own life, piece by piece, and I didn't know how to stop it. Then I needed a minor surgical procedure, a routine operation to remove a small cyst. Nothing serious, outpatient surgery. I would be home the same day. But Jennifer insisted I stay with her for a few days afterward to recover. I agreed. That seemed reasonable. The surgery went fine. I woke up in recovery feeling groggy, but okay. Jennifer was there, smiling at me. She said she had just a few papers for me to sign, standard post-operative forms. My head was fuzzy from the anesthesia. My hand was shaking. She held the clipboard steady while I scrawled my signature across several pages. I didn't read them. I trusted her. When I was discharged the next day, Jennifer didn't take me back to my house. She said I needed more time to recover and that we were going to stop somewhere first. That somewhere was Sunrise Gardens Assisted Living. I thought we were just visiting, maybe looking at options for the future. But when we walked inside, the director greeted me by name and said she was so glad to meet me. She talked about my room being ready, about the activities I could participate in, about how happy I would be there. I looked at Jennifer in confusion. She took my hand and explained, very calmly, that she had made the decision that this was best for me. She said I had signed the admission papers in the hospital. She said my house was too much for me to handle. She said this was temporary, just until I regained my strength. But I could see in her eyes that it wasn't temporary. This was her plan all along. I tried to refuse. I said I wanted to go home. The director exchanged a look with Jennifer, and Jennifer explained that given my recent medical procedure and my cognitive issues, she had made this decision as my power of attorney. She had determined I was no longer capable of living independently. I felt the walls closing in. I had been tricked, manipulated, and trapped. They took me to a small room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. This was supposed to be my new home. Jennifer unpacked a small bag she had brought. Some of my clothes, my toothbrush, a few photos. She said she would bring more of my things later. I asked her what was happening to my house. She avoided my eyes and said not to worry about it. She said she and Brad would take care of everything. That's when I knew. She was going to take my house. For the first week, I was in shock. I went through the motions, ate the meals they brought, attended the mandatory activities, tried to process what had happened. The staff was kind but firm. When I said I wanted to leave, they told me my daughter had placed me there for my own safety and I needed to follow her care plan. I called Jennifer every day, begging her to take me home. She said I needed to give it time, that I would adjust. She said the house was being taken care of. She said this was what was best for me. Finally, after 2 weeks, she visited me. I confronted her directly. I asked her what she had done with my house. She sighed, like I was being difficult. She explained that maintaining 2 properties was too expensive for her family. She said that since I wasn't living there anymore, it made sense to sell it. The money would go into a trust for my care, she assured me. She said she had already contacted a real estate agent. I told her I wanted to go home. I told her I never agreed to any of this. I told her she had no right to sell my house. She looked at me with this mixture of pity and frustration. She said I wasn't thinking clearly. She said the doctor had documented my cognitive decline. She said she had power of attorney and was making the decisions that were in my best interest, whether I understood that or not. I realized then that she had been building a case against me for months. The photos of my messy house, the geriatric assessment, the documentation of every forgotten pill, every missed appointment. She had created a paper trail that made me look incompetent. And now she was going to sell my house, the house my mother left me, the only real asset I had ever owned. And I had no way to stop her. But I refused to give up. I started asking questions, talking to other residents. Several of them had been placed in Sunrise Gardens by family members who then took control of their assets. One woman's son had sold her home and spent all the proceeds. Another man's daughter had emptied his bank accounts. Elder abuse, they called it. But no one seemed able to do anything about it. One of the nurses, a kind woman named Teresa, took pity on me. She slipped me the phone number for Adult Protective Services. She told me to call them, to report what was happening. She said if I truly had been placed here against my will and my daughter was misusing her power of attorney, there were legal protections. I called from the payphone in the common room. I explained my situation, that I was mentally competent, that I had been coerced into signing admission papers while under anesthesia, that my daughter was trying to sell my house without my consent. The woman on the other end of the line took detailed notes and said they would send a caseworker to visit me. 3 days later, a woman named Margaret came to see me. She interviewed me privately, away from the staff. She asked detailed questions about my cognitive state, my living situation before coming to Sunrise Gardens, and my relationship with Jennifer. She asked if I wanted to leave the facility. I told her absolutely yes. Margaret explained that because Jennifer had legal power of attorney and I had signed admission papers, getting me released would require proving that I was mentally competent and that Jennifer was abusing her authority. She recommended I hire an attorney who specialized in elder law. But I had no money. Jennifer controlled all my accounts now. Margaret made some calls. She found me a legal aid attorney who agreed to take my case pro bono. His name was David Chen, and he was passionate about elder rights. He came to meet me at Sunrise Gardens, and I told him everything. David immediately filed an emergency petition with the court to have my competency evaluated by an independent doctor. He also filed a motion to freeze the sale of my house until the case could be heard. Jennifer was furious. She called me and accused me of being ungrateful, of embarrassing her professionally. She said she had only been trying to help me, and this was how I repaid her. The court-appointed doctor came to evaluate me. We spent 3 hours going through cognitive tests, memory assessments, and discussions about my daily functioning. At the end, he asked me directly if I wanted to be in Sunrise Gardens. I told him no. I told him I had been coerced and manipulated. I told him I wanted my life back. His report was clear. I showed no signs of cognitive impairment that would require assisted living placement. My memory was appropriate for my age. I was fully capable of independent living. In his professional opinion, I had been inappropriately institutionalized. The judge ordered my immediate release from Sunrise Gardens. He also suspended Jennifer's power of attorney pending a full hearing on whether she had abused her authority. I walked out of that facility after 6 weeks of confinement, and David drove me back to my house. Jennifer had already moved some of her family's belongings into it. She had redecorated my bedroom. She had thrown away many of my personal items, claiming she was cleaning out clutter. It took 8 more months of legal battles, but eventually the court revoked Jennifer's power of attorney entirely. They found that she had misrepresented my condition, manipulated me into signing documents while medically impaired, and attempted to unlawfully seize my assets. The judge was particularly harsh in his ruling, noting that financial exploitation of elderly parents by adult children was a growing crisis. Jennifer was ordered to return all control of my finances to me. The real estate listing was cancelled. My house remained mine. But my relationship with my daughter was destroyed. She never apologized. She never admitted wrongdoing. In her mind, she had been trying to help me, and I had betrayed her by fighting back. We haven't spoken in 2 years now. I don't see my grandchildren anymore. That loss breaks my heart every single day. But I have my freedom. I have my home. I have my dignity. I'm telling this story because what happened to me is happening to thousands of elderly people across this country. Adult children who see their parents' assets as inheritances they can access early, who use power of attorney as a weapon rather than a protection, who institutionalize capable parents not for their well being, but for convenience and profit. The warning signs were all there, and I ignored them. The excessive concern about my health, the documentation of normal age related forgetfulness as evidence of incompetence, the pressure to sign legal documents, the isolation from my support system. If I had recognized what was happening sooner, I could have protected myself better. If you're reading this and you have an uneasy feeling about how an adult child is treating you, trust that feeling. You don't owe your house to anyone, not even your children. You don't have to sign power of attorney because someone pressures you to. You don't have to agree to move into assisted living if you don't need it. And if you're already trapped, know that there are resources. Adult protective services, legal aid attorneys, elder care advocates. The law is on your side if you're being exploited. You have rights, no matter how old you are. I was lucky. I found help. I fought back. I won. But I lost my daughter in the process. And that's a grief I carry every day. I raised her to be better than this. I sacrificed everything so she could have opportunities I never had. And she repaid me by trying to steal the one thing I had left. I don't know if I'll ever understand how someone I loved so much could do this to me, but I do know this. I survived. I'm still here, in my house, living my life on my terms, and no one will ever take that away from me again.